All right, here we are again at the Your Coach podcast, and I am with my good friend Bruce Brown. Bruce is, I don't know what, one of the fastest 75-year-olds on the planet, probably in the marathon, maybe not in the sprints. So we're gonna talk to Bruce today about all of his secrets, all the things that he does to make himself be so great. I can tell I'm making him uncomfortable because he doesn't like to talk about how great he is, but that's sort of the point today. So we're going to talk about you, Bruce. To start, like just I'm going to make you do it. List your accolades a little bit. You've run Boston, Chicago, and Berlin, and what were those results in the last little bit?
Okay. Boston was the last three marathons I've run are Boston and Chicago in 2022. And I was first in both of those in my age group, the 75 to 79 age group. But the Boston one, my time was so terrible, I just went home. I didn't even stay around to see that I had won. But anyway, yeah. And then in Berlin, I was second in my age group, but a younger kid named Eugene Dykes, who was younger than I, but still in the same age group, came in faster. And as my wife keeps on saying, yeah, and whoever was number three was a half hour slower than you. So I guess when you get to my age, there's a limited number of folks that are still out there. Great advantage. So yesterday I said, yeah, how many people are out there even alive at age 77? And I went on to a US kind of CDC website, say, of 100,000 people born in 1945 to 1947, how many would still be alive in 2024? And it's like 60% have already died. So
Okay,
and
that's it.
then everyone else who's ill and disabled and all the rest. I mean, it's a small crowd out there.
It's a small crowd. Yeah. Well, hey, I mean, it's part of it is just getting there, right? Getting to the start line.
Yeah, it's the way of the world. Yeah.
So speaking of the start line, let's just kind of reverse back in time to that 1945, 47 time period. Um, Tell us about, like, because you grew up not here, you grew up in America. What was your sort of growing up like in terms of running and sports? Did you do any running when you were a kid?
I was a horribly coordinated sports guy. And I played kind of intramural basketball and I played little league baseball. And I was a catcher in little league and I was terrified of the pitcher because the damn pitchers were so fast. Anyway, I wasn't a great sport. However, when I was, I guess, 15, in gym, we had to run like 100-yard dash. I was kind of one of the slower kids in the gym class. And then we had to do a 1 mile cross country run. And this is all without any kind of prep at all. I guess I was 15 or maybe 16. So I ran that and I ran it in 5.5 minutes. And the coach, who was also the track coach, accused me of cheating. Fortunately, the guy who came in second, and I still remember who it was 60 years later, it was Bob Burmaster, and he said, no, he didn't. And the whole damn thing. So the coach invited me to join the cross country team, which was going on, had been going on for about a month. And I said, okay. So I showed up for the practices. And day one, they did bleachers or something like that because we didn't have hills. And I got home and I was okay. But after 3 days, and I'm guessing if it was 3 days, it might have been the second week. When I got home and I had a kilometer to walk to get home, I had to go up the stairs on my bum because I couldn't walk just to get into the bathtub. So that was my introduction to cross country and learning, don't start out as though you're like everybody else. Take it easy. So that's one lesson. And I didn't do any other running until I was in my early 60s. And my wife looked at me and said, "You're getting a pot belly." And I know you have a hard time imagining me with a pot belly, but my belt had gone, I was waist size went up to 35, and I probably weighed a little over 160. And so I went to the running room. And the first day you go there at like 8:30 in the morning, and there's a gang that has taken off, and there's several other groups. And I got there a couple minutes late, and I said, what do I do? And the guy pointed down the road down Sherbrooke Street and said, "Go catch up with those guys. They've just started." So I went and ran along Sherbrooke Street to St. Urbain's. Sherbrooke to St. Urbain is probably 3-4 kilometers,
Sherbrooke
Jimmy.
and what? You started in
Sherbrooke.
Westmount Y or Westmount Running
We
Room?
started at the Westmount running
Okay.
room, and it's probably 3 or 4 kilometers.
Yeah.
And I caught up to Adele. I still remember her name. And they're Olga and someone else, and they were doing a taper
Hmm.
for a marathon. So I said, "Okay, I can talk. You guys are talking. That's all right." And then we turned on Saint Urbain and ran uphill to go to Mount Royal.
Hmm.
And I said, "Okay, you guys have stopped talking, and I'm a little out of breath, so I'm still with you." I was wearing a heart rate monitor that was my wife's, because my wife was running with the running room at that time and had been doing it for a while. And that's why she said, "Bruce, you should try it out." So we got to Olmsted Trail, which goes up Mount Royal in Montreal. And I was running along with them. And at one point I said, "Guys, I got to stop." And I looked at my little, whatever the watch was with for the heart rate monitor. My heart rate was 172. And I said, "Yeah, I think I better walk for a bit." So they went on, and I walked for, a minute or two. And then I kind of slowly ran along. And they were waiting for me there's a stairway that goes up to the lookout, maybe a kilometer further along. And they said, "Yeah." And so I said, "Yeah, my heart rate was 172." And so Adele shows me her watch, and I think her heart rate is like 75 or 80 or something, but they've been waiting for a while. Anyway, so I run with them the rest of the way, and it was about 14K, if I'm not mistaken, back. And I couldn't walk for 2 days. Reminded me a little bit of when I was 16 years
You,
old. And
you didn't really learn that lesson.
no, anyway, but it meant that I could do it. I mean, I was, even though I was overweight by the standards of today, I could run. So I started running with the running room and did that and ran my first marathon in Ottawa in 2009. And that was convinced me that my brain was really protecting me, because towards about 200, 300 meters from the end, when you could still see the arch for the end of the marathon, I found myself sitting quietly on the curb at the edge, and a race director talking to me and say, "Bruce, can you tell me your name, please?" I had no
Easy
memory
question.
of the last 3 kilometers, from kilometer 39 to kilometer 42,
Hmm.
complete blank. But I didn't collapse. I didn't do anything. My brain just said, "Have a seat." So I sat down, took me by the arm and led me. And I was really dehydrated because it was warm, as it always is in Ottawa. But that was my first marathon. And I'm rambling a little bit, but I guess that tells you where I came from.
Yeah, and I mean you mentioned your brain and stuff. I think we should also talk about your professional background as a medical doctor. So between 15 and 60, that's kind of what you were doing. You were working as a doctor.
Yeah, as a doc, yeah, I worked at St. Mary's, and I worked with a group in public health on injuries, trying to reduce injuries in Quebec.
Mm. And when you started the running room, were you still working or retired then?
I was still working. I ran for 4 years while I was still working, and then I retired
Mhm.
at around age 65.
And did you find that like retirement allowed you to kind of do
Oh
more
yeah,
running
yeah,
or?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
when you're retired, you've got a lot of opportunities. And it was kind of nice because what had happened about a year after I started with the running room is the group that
Mm.
was formed. And there were four runners that I ran with. I think three of them were 25 to 30 years younger than me. And the fourth one was closer to 40 some years. That was Camille,
Mm.
who you also coach now. And that was about 2010. And we
Doesn't, we
ran,
can name names. We could say Barry, we could say Les, we
yeah,
could drop
that's right.
names.
Yeah, all these guys. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they were meeting at what was then, I guess, a second cup and is no longer a second cup in probably 5 days a week at that. And we trained together and ran like, I think there were 6 or 7 of us that went down to Philadelphia in 2014. And then the same gang went to Toronto in 2015. And essentially, all of us had our personal bests in 2015. We had trained using Pete Fitzinger's book, and in 2014 we used the lower level of training, and in 2015 we were running up to 110 kilometers a week, and we essentially all kind of blew gaskets following the Toronto marathon. I think four of us ended up in the following year or two having osteitis pubis, which sounds like a sexually transmitted condition, but it isn't. It's an inflammation at the joint where the pelvis bones come together in the front of the body. And that was really disabling. And particularly with Ari, who you've been coaching for a long time, that was a real big challenge for him. And unlike the younger runners, what I in general did when I had a problem is I stopped running. And these younger guys, they just kept trying to run through it and they just messed themselves up.
Yeah.
And because I was such a lousy athlete as I was younger, I never wore out anything. So
Yeah.
all my bits and pieces were still together. And in order to run, all I had to be able to do is stand up. And I did that pretty well. I fall about twice a year.
Yeah.
As long
Yeah.
as I just keep it not more than twice a year, I'll probably be okay.
Yeah. So let's talk about this little group because yeah, as you said, like I've coached most of the guys in that group at one point or another and still am for some. And so how did it form? Like how did you get invited into that inner circle? What was that about?
I don't know if there was anything very formal. I think I just kind of showed up and I hung up with them and said, "Screw you, I'm here and I'm going to have coffee with you afterwards." I really don't remember,
Yeah.
but certainly I think that the 4 or 5, or depending on what point in time, 6 of them
Hmm.
really had an important impact on me because it was a social event and they were all faster than I was. And that's a tremendous advantage if it doesn't kill me, just to try and keep up and be sensible. And I had time available. Most of them had flexible working hours or could adjust their working hours. One was a student, a couple were doctors, one was an economist who had reasonable control of his life most days, except for deadlines. And it was really helpful to me because they didn't diss me. They basically just said, "Come on, hang in there. Rule 5, be tough."
Yeah. Yeah. Rule 5 for sure. Yeah, it's it's really good to find that kind of a group. And I think it's something that um, you know, runners runners seek. Even I would say like I've had this conversation with people like I'm kind of a lone wolf when it comes to running. Like I do most of my running alone, and I think most people do, even if you do have a group. But I mean, I really enjoy that group. I I found the group because, so I'll tell my story of how I came into the group just for fun because it's sort of part of your history there. Barry had found me through, online and wanted to coach. And so I had started coaching him. Um, and and so just I wasn't running with the group, or I didn't really know of the group. He just said, "Oh yeah, I run with some guys and whatever, but I want this sort of training plan." And also around the same time, or maybe before, and maybe this is how Barry found me, Les Landsberger had showed up when I was coaching at McGill and had joined our kind of track group. And then I stopped coaching at McGill, and I was sort of coaching my own thing at that time. And I was running every Thursday with one of the athletes I had coached at McGill, my friend Misha, who now she lives in Switzerland, but we were running, she was working at the Glen. And so I would kind of run up to Sherbrooke or Demesnev and meet her, run with her to her work, and then run home. And that was kind of like my Thursday run. And one day we ran into you guys, and I was like, "Oh, Barry." I was like, "Oh, it's the guy I coached, whatever." And then that's when, near then, is when she sort of said, "Oh yeah, I'm moving to New York," because her husband had got a job in New York. And so I think I said to Barry, I'm like, "So I just lost my Thursday running partner. Can I come run with you guys?" And yeah, he was like, "Yeah, sure, whatever." So it's, I think, for people to understand the group, yeah, like it's a group of very, mature, smart professionals. I think the running part is good, but I always just love the coffee afterwards. And it's sort of, I don't know, my schedule has, I mean, summer is always, everyone's everywhere and traveling and stuff, but I haven't been able to, I haven't really had a coffee in a while, just because the way my schedule is. But that's the thing I think I miss the most, just because, just like you guys are all really smart. And it's good to listen to you talk about, different ideas and different things.
Well, it's really embarrassing when Rob starts talking about films or current music. I mean, if you talked about Bach or Beethoven or Shostakovich or somebody, I would be able to at least understand what's going on, but
Hmm.
I'm not at that level. Anyway,
Wow.
yeah,
Everybody has their own areas of expertise, though.
yeah. The big problem with the group is it doesn't exist anymore
Mm,
because um, David had hip trouble and he
yeah.
was told, don't run or you're going to be mine, at least according to the orthopedic surgeon.
Hmm.
And so he's doing bicycle. One of the other guys, Eduardo, moved to BC.
Yeah.
Rob has really cut back because of injuries, but also he's a good swimmer, a
Hmm.
former water polo player for university,
Yeah.
and he's gone back to doing more of that.
Hmm.
And that's about it. So this year,
Hmm.
I'm pretty much now on my own, aside from the times I go down to the canal and meet
Hmm.
either you or Sean, but
Hmm.
Sean was out for what, 3 months with
Hmm.
ankle. You were out also for
Yeah.
quite some time with
The knee, yes.
you were
So
kneecapped.
I
Yeah.
was thinking. So let's talk about that, because we're talking about a group of, kind of older gentlemen. Um, and what is it that has kept you on your feet as, an older gentleman? What do runners need to, know or think about as they get older to be consistent and to continue to run?
Well, I think one of the things is not to think too much about it, just to get out and do it. Don't,
Mhm.
and in wintertime and even in the heat of summer, it's really just getting out and doing it. And you don't have to do what the threshold runs or whatever else that coach has kind of thrown at you. But do what you can do and principally don't overdo it.
Mhm.
Uh, for me, what I really like is doing slow, long runs, like going for 2 hours or more than 2 hours and having someone along and chatting. You can talk all the way through that. And now I don't have that. It's a thing of the past,
No one can
unless
keep up with you.
no, it's not. That never going very fast on that, but none of the other guys are doing it anymore. So we need a new cohort. You need a new running group.
Get some new
And
younger blood in there to help you out.
yeah, yeah, it doesn't even have to be young. Well, get new older. It would be wonderful, but I just don't think there are that many of us who are still standing.
Yeah. So what, I think you touched on a few things there, like don't listen to the coach. No, that's not what you meant. But I think the point there is like to kind of underdo it rather than overdo it. I think
Yeah,
that's smart. And runners generally, tend to be people who were, wanting to achieve something and kind of try hards and stuff. So the instinct is not to underdo it. The instinct is usually to like, oh, I could do extra, I could do more. And I think, yeah, as you move along in your career, you realize like, well, if I want to come back tomorrow, then I gotta hold it back today. Like we've talked about this a bit, like what kind of recovery, do you find? Do you have a sort of set number of days, maybe between hard efforts that you feel is good, or are you just sort of you wait until you get a sign from your body that says like, okay, I'm good now?
I don't do either.
Okay.
I basically right now I'm running differently than I've run in the past. And I think because I gave a prime directive to my coach that I wanted this next marathon to be special. And he has been driving me like I have, I don't recall having been driven this way. So I'm not giving the recovery. I'm feeling tired and I would not be able to continue like this for multiple months. I think I'm counting down like 9 weeks now.
Mm-hmm.
I think you've given me a gift for this coming weekend
Mm-hmm.
of having just an undefined marathon pace, which I love.
Yeah.
Uh, like 15 minutes 4 times, and even giving me a rest period between each of the 15 minutes. That to me it's a godsend comparing to what I've had. So
Yeah.
you
Well,
used to give you used to give us like 2 or 3 weeks hard and then 1 week light. And I've been waiting for 5 weeks for my 1 week light.
well, but part of that is, you went away and then you ended up with like 9 days in a row or something like that. That was
I
not
did a lot. I
the
did a
plan was
lot.
not 9 days in a row. No, but I think there is this give and take, right? Like in order to progress, you do need to kind of push yourself a little bit, but this is the challenge of like, okay, how much can we push? And it's not about necessarily an individual workout or something, because we're not doing, just to make people understand what we're talking about here, like we're not doing intervals, like nothing, like almost all the work you're doing is all sort of threshold, right? So
Yeah.
we're holding back here, like we're not doing, like mile repeats or something. And I think that would probably be foolish. Like, and we've even discussed about strides, just strides are not really working for you really, or, or like the drills or the weights, like it seems like these short,
No,
intense things.
I'm doing them now, the mini
Yeah.
progressions. I'm
Yeah.
doing them all. I'm being very religious right now. And
Mhm.
I think that you have given me, said, okay, Bruce, you've chosen this bed and I'm gonna make the bed for you. And I asked for it. So I'm not complaining. I mean, I am complaining, but I'm complaining about myself more than anything else,
Yeah.
just because I said that I wanted to do well this time.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, hey, if you want to do well, you gotta put some work in. But I think the recovery is key, and not just, it's the recovery is not just the taper. Like it's definitely, you know, um, built in, and yeah, like this week is kind of, meant to be a little more relaxed.
Yeah, it is particularly the long run is a little more relaxed. Yeah, I'm happy.
Yeah.
But
And
I've been able for the most part to do the runs that you've suggested to me, even though I thought that they were crazy hard.
yeah.
So I couldn't at like 4 weeks ago or 5 weeks ago, the same threshold runs that I'm running now, I could not really do it.
Mhm.
And part of it now is that we've had some cooler weather.
Mm,
And for me, temperature makes a massive difference. I mean, my refrigerator system, as you get older, your eyes aren't as good, your hearing isn't good, your brain doesn't work so well. My teeth haven't started falling out yet, but you have all this stuff that's on a path, and um, it's just hard.
mm,
It's harder than it was even 5 or 6 years ago. I mean, I ran 3K at 4 minutes a K on the
mm,
indoor track, and
right.
that was 4 years ago, 5 years ago.
Hmm.
And I'm running like, you know, 4 minutes a K for a minute now.
Hmm.
And I find that I'm pushing.
Hmm.
It's not the same. It's
Hmm.
uh it's the
Yeah,
way
but
of the
you're putting in a
world.
lot of time at 4:30 per K.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Getting 30 minutes twice a week at that is
Mhm.
is a lot. Yeah, and that goes fine.
Yeah. So what would you say is your favorite workout or your favorite type of workout?
By far, my favorite is, and I have two favorites. The first one I'll tell you about. The second one is going to make you cringe. But anyway, first one is doing long, slow runs. I enjoy them. I'm comfortable doing them. Aside from the time I was out and my incarcerated hernia started bothering me, and I ended up in the emergency room and had surgery on a Saturday morning. But aside from that, my long runs are easy for me. They're they're not stressful. The shorter runs, I do like the really short mini progressions just because I can do them and I see that they get a little faster. But the other thing that I really like, and I hate to say it, is doing fast workouts on a treadmill, because I hang on and I just go. And going at, the 4 minutes per kilometer pace, doing a kilometer, waiting until my heart rate comes down to 110, doing another kilometer and repeating that. I find that very rewarding because it's easy, and it's not a true 4K, and I know that you do not like this, but sometimes old guys, we get more more stubborn here. Something going on here. Hey, I will explain. He's barking at a dog outside. Let
All right, we'll
let me get
pause.
a dog pass.
All right, we're back. I paused the recording, so there was a bit of a skip there. Bruce
Yeah,
had to go and discipline his
yeah,
dog.
yeah. Well, it's not even our dog. We're dog sitting.
Okay.
He's a really nice dog, but he gets going sometimes. Yes, excuse me, where were we? Me
You're
telling
talking
you
about how
how
much you
I like
love the
treadmills
treadmill.
and you not liking treadmills. But
Yeah.
anyway, that's
Yeah.
what,
So that's interesting. I mean, I think it's what is funny to me is that the two workouts that you really like are kind of polar opposites in a way. Um, and yeah, and so you think that you like the treadmill because it's easy. Can you unpack that a bit more? What do you mean easy?
well,
Because it's not.
it's all set.
Uh,
I know what I got to do. There's a defined endpoint. I know when I start again because I use my heart rate to say, okay, it's time to go again. And I set my paces at paces that I know I can do.
mm-hmm,
And it's just something it's very mechanical,
mm-hmm,
but is so predictable and easy to control. So I know I don't have to think. I just have to do.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
And when I'm out on a track and I'm trying to do a threshold run, most of the time now I carry my watch, but I don't look at it. I
Mm-hmm,
just say, okay, maybe one time every 5 minutes, I'll look to see, okay, I'm roughly at the pace I should be.
mm-hmm,
And I don't waste time at it,
mm-hmm.
but I don't like to have to look and think about that.
Yeah. Well,
So
that's good. I mean, you should look less at your watch, I think, for the
yeah, that's
thresholds.
right. Yeah, yeah.
That
And you
that's
just as soon as I have run one marathon without a watch,
mm,
and my real worry with that was that I would go too fast,
mm-hmm. And how
which
did
I
it go?
went too slow, and I'd burn myself out.
So what did happen?
It went fine.
Yeah.
There was no problem.
Yeah.
as much as I can remember.
Was that the Ottawa one where you were off the side there?
No, no,
Oh, okay.
it wasn't.
Do
It
you
wasn't.
always lose consciousness in a marathon?
No, that's the only time anything like that has happened. And what is interesting is I lost awareness, but I
Hmm.
didn't collapse.
Hmm.
I literally sat down quietly with hundreds of people behind the fence,
Hmm.
just standing there and cheering as people
Hmm.
were coming into the finish line. I
Yeah.
mean, just sitting there,
Yeah.
okay, watch the world go by and
Huh.
being totally unaware. It was quite neat.
Yeah. So what would be your favorite race that you've done?
Clearly, the favorite race in recent memory was in Berlin.
Hmm.
And the reason that it was so nice is that I had been uh, injured. I'd had surgery in May of the preceding year with troubles with intestines being, it's kind of like having an incarcerated hernia is kind of like having a heart attack in your intestine. And, and you can get some scarring and so on. And I had trouble with that afterwards. So I had no expectations about it being a particularly important race, and I had a holiday associated with the race,
Hmm.
and I just ran it kind of comfortably. And I think my time was 3:34, something like that.
Yeah.
And so it was, you know,
3:33:57. I have it here. So there's a website. I don't know if you've heard of this guy, the running professor, and he always does these talks about the US Masters. And
okay,
and so he did a write-up of that race in the
okay,
age category. And so he has about like 100 words on Gene Dykes.
yeah,
And then he says, Bruce Brown ran a strong race as well, but was not competitive with Dykes. Few are.
that's good.
that,
That's fine.
that's your mention there.
That,
So this
that was
Dykes, this
fine.
this Dykes fellow, what do you see yourself as catching up to him at some point?
He's a younger guy. He's younger. You just
He's
leave him
only
on his own.
74.
And I did look up some of the stuff on him. He's a sponsored runner by, I think, an oatmeal company in
Hmm.
Oregon or Washington State.
Hmm.
And he goes around the world and he runs everywhere. And he was trying to run the Western 100-mile
Oh.
uh, race last year and wanted to be the oldest, fastest finisher in that race ever.
Hmm.
And um, it was tremendously hyped. I mean, there was all kinds of articles written about it and so on. And he was pulled at the 71-mile
Ooh.
limit because he didn't make the cutoff. But even so, 71 miles
Yeah.
for everybody. And he was, I think, 74, something like that at that point. But what doesn't get said is the guy who ran it few years ago who was 73 and finished the 100-mile, and you don't hear a word about him.
Hmm.
It's a guy who actually did it and did it within the time limits and
Hmm.
is the same age bracket,
Hmm.
but got no acknowledgement, at least that in my small world understanding. Maybe he did get
Hmm.
uh, good acknowledgement. But I like to see, lots of people getting acknowledgement. And I think at my stage in life, the goal is say, how well can I do compared to myself?
Hmm.
That's I think, and that's for most older runners should be,
Yeah.
because the gold standard is not Dykes. The gold standard is Ed Whitlock.
Right.
And Ed Whitlock has, he kind of sewed up every 1 year age group in the world for marathons, half marathons, 10K, 5K, everything under the sun.
Hmm.
I listened to him talk at Concordia once when he must have been 80, and he was being interviewed by a Radio Canada kind of columnist, I guess, who was a runner. It was a woman who was a tremendously good interviewer, but his answers were typically one word: no, yes, I eat what my wife gives me. What do you do when you're injured? I stop. Uh,
Nice.
it was not exciting
Hmm.
to, and then I think the only contact, near contact I had with him was running the Toronto waterfront marathon in 2017 or 2018. And I was having an absolutely horrendous run. And I don't know why. And that happens sometimes. Nothing's working. And along about, I was probably a couple kilometers from the end, and who runs by me, hunched over, running crooked,
Oh.
faster than me. And it was Whitlock. And he died about 6 months later of a multiple myeloma. So he had been ill
Mm.
for years before that.
Hmm.
And I think he was 84 years old. And I thought that was kind of neat that I was there
Hmm.
just hobbling. It was as some runs we've all had
Hmm.
uh, are bad, and he goes past. So more power to him. But he spoils it for the rest of the world, as any superstar does, because you aspire to it, but you're not anywhere in the same category as he is.
Yeah. Well, you're an inspiration to us, Bruce. Um, yeah, so I think we can end it here. Thank you for taking the time to do this and talk about, your running. And because I think, people sometimes will see results and they see like, oh, 75, and it's like, how does that even, they maybe have different assumptions. So we could kind of clear that up and share your story with the world. We don't have the marketing of the Gene Dykes, but at least now it's out there a little bit.
I think basically the marketing is you pay your dues and you get the result that's related to what you put into it. And you
Yeah.
got to decide, do you really want to put that much into it? Because there's other things in life. And when I come home now and have to take a nap after my morning runs, I say,
Oh, naps are good though. It's good to take a
oh,
nap.
naps are good. I agree. But
Good.
there's other things in a day.
For sure. All right. Well, I'm gonna stop recording here. So thank you, Bruce.
Yep. It's a pleasure. Thanks, John.
Mm.